Sorry. Hey, all. We're going to continue from where we're at before. And welcome to Read and Reflect. We're working on trying to complete the Satanic verses. It's a very difficult text to read, but I think we're doing a pretty good job. So we'll just jump right in. We were at... Let's just start here. Jabril, captive aboard A1420, sank into forgivable rhapsodies, fixing Chamcha with his glittering eye, explicating the mysteries of the runner's coding system. Black swastika, red circle, yellow slash dot running into his mind's eye. The entire relay from home to office, desk. The improbable system by which 2,000 dabawalas delivered each day over 100,000 lunch pails. On a bad day, Spoono, maybe 15, got mislaid. We were illiterate, mostly, but the signs were our secret tongue. Boston circled London, gunmen patrolling the gangways, and the lights in the passenger cabins had been switched off. But Jabril's energy illuminated the gloom. On the grubby movie screen on which earlier in the journey the in-flight inevitability of Walter Matthau had stumbled lugubriously into the aerial ubiquity of Goldie Hawn. There were shadows moving projected by the nostalgia of the hostages, and the most sharply defined of them was the spindly adolescent Ismail Najmuddin, Mummy's angel, in a Gandhi cap running tiffins across the town. The young Dabawala skipped nimbly through the shadow crowd, because he was used to such conditions. Think, Spoono, picture 34 tiffins in a long wooden tray on your head, and when the local train stops, you may have maybe 1 minute to push on or off, and then running in the streets flat out, yar, with the friends, yar, with the trucks, buses, scooters, cycles, and what all. 1, 2, 1, 2, lunch. The Dabas must get through, and the monsoon running down the railway line when the train broke down, or waist deep in water in some flooded street, and there were gangs. Salad Baba, truly organized gangs of Daba stealers. It's a hungry city, baby. What to tell you? But we could handle them. We were everywhere, knew everything, what thieves could escape our eyes and ears. We never went to any policia. We looked after our own. At night, father and son would return exhausted to their shack by the airport runway at Santa Cruz. And when Ismail's mother saw him approaching, illuminated by green, red, yellow of the departing jet planes, she would say that simply to lay eyes on him made all her dreams come true, which was the first indication that there was something peculiar about Jabril, because from the beginning it seemed he could fulfill people's most secret desires without having any idea of how he did it. His father, Najmuddin Sr., never seemed to mind that his wife had eyes only for her son, that the boy's feet received nightly pressings while the father's went unstroked. A son is a blessing, and a blessing requires the gratitude of the blessed. So, what we're looking at is kind of going deeper into Jibril Farishta's background, or Ismail Najmuddin. It's talking about that he had a kind of a special life, that his mother kind of really treated him like he was really the most wonderful thing ever, and his father kind of went with that. And it's talking about the kind of space is very hungry. We keep hearing about dabawalas and tiffins, and tiffins are like lunch pails. It means multiple things, but it's kind of like the layered lunch pail in this thing. And the dabawalas are people who bring the lunches. So it's kind of creating the very South Asian atmosphere. So it's pretty cool. And Yes. So it's a pretty cool situation, and our goal is to finish this chapter so we can get to chapter 3. There's a lot to do. We have 564 pages, so we got to keep going. Naima Najmuddin died. A bus hit her, and that was that. Jibril wasn't around to answer her prayers for life. Neither father nor son ever spoke of grief. Silently, as though it were customary and expected, they buried their sadness beneath extra work, engaging in inarticulate contest. Who could carry the most dabas on his head? Who could acquire the most new contracts per month? Who could run faster? As though the greater labor would indicate the greater love. We saw his father at night, the knotted veins bulging in his neck and his temples. Ismail Najmuddin would understand how much the older man had resented him, and how important it was for the father to defeat the son and regain thereby his usurped primacy in the affections of his dead wife. Once he realized this, the youth eased off, but his father's seal remained unrelenting, and pretty soon he was getting promotion. No longer a mere runner, but one of the organizing muqaddams. When Jibril was 19, Najmuddin Sr. became a member of the Lunch Runners Guild, the Bombay Tiffin Carriers Association, and when Jibril was 20, his father was dead, stopped in his tracks by a stroke that almost blew him apart. He just ran himself into the ground, said the guild's general secretary, Baba Sahib Mahtre himself. That poor bastard. He just ran out of steam. But the orphan knew better. He knew that his father had finally run hard enough and long enough to wear down the frontiers between the worlds. He had run clear out of his skin and into the arms of his wife, to whom he proved once and for all the superiority of his love. Some migrants are happy to depart. So kind of what we're learning here is we're learning about the kind of complexity about Ismail's childhood, that, there's a certain kind of tension between the father, the son, and the mother. The mother passes away from being hit by a bus. That's pretty sudden in the text. And then basically both Ismail and his father, Najmuddin Sr., are basically serving lunches and they're a part of this career of serving, this kind of South Asian career of going and delivering lunches. And his father becomes quite successful in it, but because he works so hard, and the way it seems is, at least from Ismail's point of view, is that he's working super hard to, in some kind of spiritual way, redeem himself to his wife who had, passed away, who kind of showcase himself as being, the husband, and they kind of just work through grief. And it's an important thing, as a person who is kind of like worked as a trauma therapist. Trauma is really difficult and painful, and it's important to be honest and be able to navigate through it, so and understand it. So that's an important thing to consider. Yeah. Baba Sahib Matre sat in a blue office behind the green door above a labyrinth bazaar, an awesome figure, Buddha fat, one of the great moving forces of the metropolis, possessing the occult gift of remaining absolutely still, never shifting from his room, and yet being everywhere. Um, Important, and meeting everyone who mattered in Bombay. The day after young Ismail's father ran across the border to see Naima, the Baba Sahib summoned the young man into his presence. So upset, or what? The reply with downcast eyes. Gee, thank you, Baba Ji. I'm okay. Shut your face, said Baba Sahib Matre. From today you live with me. But, Babaji, but me no buts. Already I have informed my good wife. I have spoken. Please excuse Babaji. But how? What? Why? I have spoken. Jibril Farishta was never told why the Baba Sahib had decided to take pity on him and pluck him from the futurelessness of the streets. But after a while he began to have an idea. Mrs. Matre was a thin woman, like a pencil beside the rubbery Baba Sahib, but she was filled with so full of mother love that she should have been fat like a potato. When Baba came home, she put sweets into his mouth with her own hands, and at nights the newcomer to the household could hear the great general secretary of the BTCA protesting, "Let me go, wife. I can undress myself." At breakfast, she spoon-fed Matre with large helpings of malt, and before he went to work, she brushed his hair. They were a childless couple, and young Najmuddin understood that Baba Sahib wanted him to share the load. Oddly enough, however, the Begum, or the lady, did not treat the young man as a child. "You see, he is a grown fellow." "You see, he is a grown fellow," she told her husband when poor Matre pleaded. "Give the boy a blessed spoon of malt." "Yes, a grown fellow. We must make a man out of him, husband. No babying for him." Gosh, the language in this text is wild. Okay. "Then darn it to hell," the Baba Sahib exploded. "Why do you do it to me? Why do you do it to me?" Mrs. Matre burst into tears. "But you are everything to me," she wept. "You are my father, my lover, my baby too. You are my lord and my suckling child. If I displease you, then I have no life." Baba Sahib Matre accepted defeat, swallowed the tablespoon of malt. Okay, there's a lot of drama here. So we're just going to try to unpack what's going on here. There's so much stuff. Oh, hey Emma, how you doing? Whew, there's a lot to unpack here. Sorry we're meeting so early. We have to do readings this week, so this is the best time between my classes. So let's see. So basically, Baba Sahib, so his parents are gone, so he's an orphan, Jibril Farishta, and Baba Sahib takes Jibril into his household because they're kind of they don't have a child, so he becomes kind of like a proxy child to them. And there's a lot of drama. You could see a bit of like tension in this house, about even eating a spoon of malt. So I think that this is it's an interesting kind of exploration. Really what we see in the text is a lot of imagery. So we kind of have an imagery of South Asia, of all these people delivering foods and kind of the leadership of delivering lunches. So, they didn't have like the trucks. This is a long time ago. They didn't have those like trucks that are outside that you can just go get your food from there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an accent I've kind of perfected for a long time. You see, I'm wearing my kurta too. I think I'll wear that every time I do this reading, because this is very South Asian. So, bringing the Indian, Desi South Asian culture here. He was a kindly man. When he disguised with insults and noise, to console the orphaned youth, he would speak to him in the Blue Office about the philosophy of rebirth, convincing him that his parents were already being scheduled for re-entry somewhere, unless, of course, their lives had been so holy that they attained their final grace. So it was Matre who started Farishta off on the whole. So basically, this proxy father is helping Jibril. Let's do that again. The whole reincarnation business, and not just reincarnation. The Baba Sahib was an amateur psychic, a tapper of table legs, and a bringer of spirits into glasses. But I gave that up. He told his protege, with many suitably melodramatic inflections, gestures, frowns, and after I got the fright of my bloody life. Once Matre recounted, the glass had been visited by the most cooperative spirits, such a too friendly fellow. See, so I thought to ask him some big questions. Is there a God? And that glass, which had been running around like a mouse or so, just stopped dead, middle of the table, not a twitch, completely fut, kaput. So then, okay, I said, if you won't answer, then try this one instead. And I came right out with it. Is there a devil? After that, the glass whoop, began to shake. Catch your ears. Slow, slow at first, then faster, faster, like a jelly until it jumped. Hey! Up from the table, into the air, fell down on its side, and oh ho! Into 1,001 pieces smashed. Believe, don't believe. Baba Sahib Matre told his charge. But then and there I learned my lesson. Don't meddle, Matre, in what you do not comprehend. The story had a profound effect on the consciousness of the young listener, because even before his mother's death, he had become convinced of the existence of the supernatural world. Sometimes when he looked around him, especially in the afternoon heat, when the air turned gluttonous, the visible world, its features and its inhabitants, and things seemed to be sticking up through the atmosphere like a profusion of hot icebergs. And he had the idea that everything continued down below the surface of the soupy air. People, motor cars, dogs, movie billboards, trees, 9/10 of their reality concealed from his eyes. He would blink, and the illusion would fade. But the sense of it never left him. He grew up believing in God, angels, demons, afrits, jinns, as matter-of-factly as if they were bullock carts or lampposts, and it struck him as a failure in his own sight that he had never seen a ghost. So now we're kind of exploring the space of the religiosity of Matre, the Baba Sahib Matre, the kind of foster father, and kind of just the idea. And it's an interesting question because this is kind of the author's take on kind of religion and spirituality. It's like people have all these kind of beliefs in religion and stuff, and has there, you just kind of believe that it's real, but has it actually been tested? Have they actually seen supernatural things? This is a kind of question that in a sense, I think that the author is even asking the audience of people who do believe. He would dream of discovering a magic optometrist from whom he would purchase a pair of green tingled spectacles, which would correct his regrettable myopia. And after that, he would be able to see through the dense, blinding air to the fabulous world beneath. From his mother, Naima Najmuddin, he had heard a great many stories of the Prophet, and if inaccuracies had crept into versions, he wasn't interested in knowing what they were. What a man, he thought. What angel would not wish to speak to him? Sometimes, though, he caught himself in the act of forming blasphemous thoughts. For example, when without meaning to, as he drifted off to sleep in his cot at the Matre residence, his somnolent fancy began to compare his own condition with that of the Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, at the time when, having been orphaned and short of funds, he had made great success of his job as the business manager of the wealthy widow, Khadija, radiallahu anha, and ended up marrying her as well. As he slipped into sleep, he saw himself sitting on a rose-strewn dais, simpering shyly beneath the sari palu, which he had placed demurely over his face, while his new husband, Baba Sahib Matre, reached lovingly towards him to remove the fabric and gaze at his features in a mirror placed in his lap. Okay, I'm going to explain a little bit of Islamic history here. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings, he was a merchant in his youth, and he was orphaned very young, even earlier than the protagonist of this text. He was, I think, it was like, I don't even have to say one when his father passed away and his mother passed away and he was like 6. So he was raised by his his grandfather at first, and then his grandfather passed away, and then he was raised by his uncle, and he went to the merchant business, and then his let's see, he went to the merchant business, and then he marries his boss, Khadija. May she, blessings on her too, and um, he was taken under her wing, and she was his boss, and then they got married. So it's kind of interesting how they are. This is kind of this small story is kind of interwoven in here. Let's see. And so the main character is kind of comparing his condition being an orphan and being taken in by Baba Sahib in the same way. He's kind of like metaphorically showcasing that. While his new husband reached lovingly towards him to remove the fabric and gaze at his features in a mirror placed in his lap. This dream of marrying Baba Sahib brought him awake, flushing hotly for shame, and after that began to worry about the impurity of his makeup that could create such terrible visions. Maybe this is kind of adding a sort of an angle of LGBTQIA+, like the idea that, the main character might be having these types of feelings. It's an interesting kind of thing that's brought in here. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? We're going to try to finish this chapter here. Mostly, however, his religious faith was low-key thing, a part of him that required no more special attention than any other. When Baba Sahib Matre took him into his home, it confirmed to the young man that he was not alone in the world, that something was taking care of him, so he was not entirely surprised when Baba Sahib called him into the Blue Office that morning of his 21st birthday and sacked him without even being prepared to listen to appeal. "You're fired," Matre emphasized, beaming. "Cashiered, hand in your chips. Dismiss." "But, uncle, shut your face." Then Baba Sahib gave the orphan the greatest present of his life, informing him that a meeting had been arranged for him at the studios of the legendary film magnate, Mr. D.W. Rama. An audition. It is for the appearance only. The Baba Sahib said, "Rama is my good friend, and we have discussed a small part to begin. Then it is up to you. Now, get out of my sight, and stop pulling such humble faces. It does not suit. But uncle, boy like you is too darn good looking to carry tiffins on his head all his life. Get gone now. Go be a homosexual movie actor. I fired you 5 minutes back. But, uncle, I have spoken. Take your lucky stars." DK. He became Jibril Farishta. But for 4 years, he did not become a star, serving his apprenticeship in a succession of minor, knockabout comic parts. He remained calm, unhurried, as though he could see the future, and his apartment lack of ambition made him something of an outsider. And that most self-seeking of industries, he was thought to be stupid or arrogant or both. And throughout the 4 wilderness years, he failed to kiss a single woman on the mouth. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. So this is basically what we're learning. There's so much background information where we fall from the plane. The 2 characters are falling from the plane, and now we're getting a whole kind of background story of who Jibril is. That he comes from a lunch-making business industry, and, his foster father or proxy father basically gets him into the acting industry because he's friends with a famous director. On screen, he played the fall guy, the idiot who loves the beauty and can't see that she wouldn't go for him in 1,000 years. Funny uncle, the poor relation, the village idiot, the servant, the incompetent crook, none of them the type of part that ever relates to a love scene. Woman kicked him, slapped him, teased him, laughed at him, but never on celluloid, looked at him, or sang to him, or danced around him with cinematic love in their eyes. Off screen, he lived alone in 2 empty rooms near the studio and tried to imagine what woman looked like without clothes on. What a great! This is a very interesting character here. To get his mind off the subject of love and desire, he studied becoming an omnivorous autodidact, devouring the metamorphic myths of Greece and Rome, the avatars of Jupiter, the boy who became a flower, the spider woman, Circe, everything, and the theosophy of Annie Besant, and the unified field theory, and the incident of the Satanic verses in the early career of the prophet. Oh boy. Okay, this is probably the more controversial things, and the politics of Muhammad's harem after returning to Mecca in triumph, and the surrealism of the newspapers, in which butterflies could fly into young girls' mouths, asking to be consumed, and children were born with no faces, and young boys dreamed in impossible detail of earlier incarnations. For instance, in the golden fortress filled with precious stones, he filled himself up with God knows what. But he could not deny in the small hours of his insomniac nights that he was full of something that he had never been used, that he did not know how to begin to use. That is love. In his dreams, he was tormented by women of unbearable sweetness and beauty, so he preferred to stay awake and force himself to rehearse some parts of his general knowledge in order to blot out the tragic feeling of being endowed with a larger than usual capacity for love, without a single person on earth to offer it to. His big break arrived with the coming of theological movies. Once the formula of making films based on the Puranas and adding the usual mixture of songs, dances, funny uncles, etc. had paid off, every god in the pantheon got his or her chance to be a star. When D.W. Rama scheduled a production based on the story of Lord Ganesh, none of the leading box office names of the time were willing to spend an entire movie concealed inside an elephant's head. Jibreel jumped at the chance. That was his first hit, Ganpati Baba. And suddenly, he was a superstar. But only with the trunk and ears on. After 6 movies playing the elephant-headed god, he was permitted to remove the thick, pendulous gray mask and put on, instead, a long, hairy tail in order to play my favorite, Hanuman, the Monkey King, in a sequence of adventure movies that owed more to certain cheap television series emanating from Hong Kong than it did to the Ramayana. So this is a kind of cool thing because I'm a big fan of monkey gods. So okay. So Hanuman has a lot in common with Sun Wukong from the Chinese mythology, and they're kind of very witty and they're kind of very fun. So that's kind of the idea. Like in Hong Kong, that idea of these kind of serials taking place. So I that would be kind of a funny movie. Sun Wukong meets Hanuman. I think that would be pretty cool. This series proved so popular that Monkey Tales became de rigueur for the city young bucks at the kind of parties frequented by convent girls known as firecrackers because of their readiness to go off with a bang. After Hanuman, there was no stopping Jibreel. His phenomenal success deepened his belief in a guardian angel, but it also led to a more regrettable development. I see that I must, after all, spill poor Rekha's beans. Even before he replaced false head with fake tail, he had become irresistibly attractive to women. The seductions of his fame had grown so great that several of these young ladies asked him if he would leap the keep the Ganesh mask on while they made love, but he refused out of respect for the dignity of Ganpati, the dignity of the god. Owing to the innocence of his upbringing, he could not at the time differentiate between quantity and quality, and accordingly felt the need to make up for lost time. He had had so many sexual partners that it was not uncommon for him to forget their names even before they had left his room. Not only did he become a philanderer of the worst type, he had also learned the arts of dissimulation, because a man who plays gods must be above reproach. So skillfully did he conceal his life of scandal and debauch that his old patron Baba Sahib, lying on his deathbed a decade after he had sent the young Dabawala out into the world of illusion, black money and lust, begged him to get married and to prove that he was a man. God's sake, mister, the Baba Sahib pleaded. When I told you to go, I told you back then to go and be a homo. I never thought you would take me seriously. There's a limit to respecting one's elders after all. Jibril threw up his hands and swore that he was no such disgraceful thing, and that when the right girl came along, he would of course undergo nuptials with a will. What are you waiting? Some goddess from heaven? Greta Garbo? Grace Kali? Ooh! Cried the old man, coughing up blood. But Jibril left him with the enigma of a smile and allowed him to die without having his mind set entirely at rest. The avalanche of sex of which Jibril Farishta was trapped managed to bury his greatest talent so deep that it might easily have been lost forever. His talent, that is, for loving genuinely, deeply, and without holding back. The rare and delicate gift which he had never been able to employ. By the time of his illness, he had all but forgotten the anguish he used to experience, owing it to his long love, which had twisted and turned in him like a sorcerer's knife. Now, at the end of each gymnastic night, he slept easily and long. He had never been plagued by dream woman, as if he had never hoped to lose his heart. Your trouble, Reka Merchant told him, when she materialized out of the clouds, is everybody always forgave you. God knows why. You always got let off. You got away with murder. Nobody ever held you responsible for what you did. He couldn't argue. God's gift? God's gift? She screamed at him. God knows where you thought you were from. Jumped up tight from the gutter. God knows what diseases you brought. But that was what women did. He thought in those days they were the vessels into which he could pour himself. And when he moved on, they would understand that it was his nature and forgive. Okay, so we're going to stop here. This is page 26. We've completed 5% of the book. Yeah, because I have to go to class, so I got to get ready for class. But it's great that you all came. We're going to be reading on Friday too, it's Wednesday, so we're going to be reading Friday. So look forward to the next thing. I'll have it all set up by then, and it's a pleasure to see you all. And we're going to end now. Peace out.